I've seen so many people go for the cheapest possible 3D printer and then end up frustrated when the machine can't handle the filament they really want or the prints keep warping. You're probably hesitating right now, wondering if you should keep scrolling or finally take the plunge on a machine that promises a lot on paper. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The fear of buying the wrong printer is real, especially when you've spent a few months learning the basics, only to have a printer stall, jam, or spit out half-finished parts that look nothing like the model you downloaded. That's why I dug into the Creality K2 Plus Combo 2026 upgrade before I even thought about buying it. The category itself, entry-level to mid-range desktop printers, has a reputation for a trade-off between price and reliability. You usually get either a cheap frame that flexes under heat, or a pricey machine that's overkill for hobby projects. The K2 Plus sits in that gray zone, and the question is whether it actually delivers the smarter by promise or just adds another set of compromises. First off, the most eye-catching claim is the multicolor printing capability. Creality's CFS system lets you load 2 filaments at once and switch between them on the fly, which sounds like a gimmick until you try printing a functional prototype that needs a hard, heat-resistant section in one color and a flexible support in another. In practice, I set the printer up to produce a small robot arm where the joint sleeves were printed in a high-temp ABS-like material while the mounting brackets were a standard PLA. The transition was clean, no visible seam, no need to pause the print and swap spools manually. That convenience translates directly into time saved, especially if you're producing small batches or iterating quickly on design tweaks. Speed is another headline: 600 mm per second print speed. Most hobbyists never push their machines that fast because higher speeds usually mean lower quality. What the K2 Plus does differently is pair that speed with a Step-servo motor system, which offers more precise motion control compared to the typical belt-driven stepper setup. In my day-to-day testing, printing a 20 mm calibration cube at 300 mm per second still produced crisp edges and accurate dimensions. When I cranked it up to 500 mm per second for a decorative keychain, the surface showed a faint staircase effect but remained within tolerances for non-functional parts. So the practical strength here is that you can really dial in speed when you don't need perfect surface finish, and still retain decent accuracy for functional prints. The direct drive extruder is another upgrade that matters when you move beyond standard PLA. Direct drive setups are generally better at handling flexible filaments, think TPU, or even soft TPU-like materials for wearable prototypes. The K2 Plus's high-temp direct drive unit can reach the temperatures needed for nylon or polycarbonate without the thermal lag you'd see on a Bowden extruder. I printed a small gear set in nylon for a custom 3D-printed gearbox, and the parts came out with the expected strength and minimal warping. That's a practical advantage for anyone who wants to go beyond hobby prints and start making parts that actually replace metal components in low-stress applications. Now, no machine is without its quirks. The build volume, about 13.8 inches on each side, roughly 350 mm, is generous for a desktop printer, but you quickly discover that the larger the space, the more you have to worry about temperature consistency. Creality added an advanced heating structure, which is essentially a heated bed with better insulation, but it still takes a while to reach the target temperature for high-temp filaments. If you're in a rush, you might find yourself waiting 10-12 minutes before the bed stabilizes at 100 C, which can be a bottleneck if you're printing multiple large parts back-to-back. Another hidden trade-off is the machine's footprint and weight. The upgraded frame is sturdy enough to dampen most vibrations, but at just under 30 kilograms it's not something you can easily move around. If you live in a small apartment and need to store the printer out of the way, you'll have to factor in that permanent presence on a desk or a dedicated table. The power consumption also spikes when you're running at the top speed and high temperature. Expect a noticeable bump on your electricity bill if you print nightly. So who should actually consider the Creality K2 Plus? If you're a maker who already has a handful of prints under your belt, knows the basics of bed leveling, and wants to start experimenting with multi-material projects without buying a separate dual extruder machine, this is a solid step up. It's also a good fit for educators or small labs that need a reliable workhorse capable of handling tougher polymers without breaking the bank. The price point sits comfortably between the ultra-budget printers that often need constant tinkering and the professional units that demand a larger investment. On the flip side, if you're a complete beginner who's still learning how to slice models, calibrate steps, and troubleshoot filament jams, the added complexity of multicolor printing and higher temperature settings might feel overwhelming. Likewise, if you only ever print simple,